Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're taking a look at some spicy battles in the Open Great League featuring a newly released Shadow Pokemon, RHYDON. RHYDON is a ground and rock type Pokemon with the moveset of Mud Slap, Breaking Swipe, and Stone Edge. For the team, I'm running Cresselia on the lead, Poliwrath is the save switch to hopefully bait out Medicham, and RHYDON is the closer. I have my work cut out for me for this team. RHYDON only has a 19% meta win rate, but I'm not going to let that stop me from trying it. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and check out RHYDON in the Open Great League. Hopping into the first match, picking up a great lead, Cresselia into Swampert, but the opponent save switches into Shadow Gliscor, and this is a problem. My backline does not do well against Gliscor, so I'm forced to stay in. They go for the Night Slash. I wait a turn to check and see if they got the boost, which thankfully they did not, and now I fire off the Grass Knot, which gets the shield from my opponent. And since they didn't get the boost, that means that I'm going to be able to live this Night Slash and return fire with the Moonblast. I don't find it super likely that the opponent is going to double shield the Gliscor, so I should be able to get some pretty nice damage here. Moonblast connects, and now I can send in Poliwrath. I'm going for the one shield farm down, as Gliscor can have access to Aerial Ace, so I will commit the shield. It is just going to be the Night Slash, and unfortunately the Gliscor with a fraction of HP is able to make one final charge move. It is just going to be the Night Slash, but I do leave with energy to threaten whatever my opponent decides to send in. They send in the Swampert. I'm farming up and going for the Dynamic Punch before they're able to make it to a Hydro. Dynamic Punch will connect onto the Swampert. Swampert is just going straight for the Hydro, and I'm going to let this go. I'm saving the shield for the Glassy RHYDON. I let myself get KO'd. I'm going for a snipe with the Mud Slap in the back. It's Galarian Stunfisk, and RHYDON has found one of its targets as it's looking for steel types. They have enough for the Earthquake here. I commit the shield, and it's the Rock Slide bait. That's very unfortunate. And now I throw one Mud Slap and the Breaking Swipe. They should get to this Earthquake shortly, so I farm up, switch into Cresselia as they fire off the Earthquake, and that catch should seal the game. Back in comes the RHYDON, Mud Slaps down the Stunfisk. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We see a Nightmare lead in the next match, Cresselia into Alolan Sandslash. I save switch into Poliwrath. I get 2 counters of damage onto the Poliwrath, and my opponent is going to respond with an Air Slash Mandibuzz. Honestly, not a bad thing to bait out the Mandibuzz here, as even though the RHYDON is running Stone Edge, with Mud Slap, that's going to take a very long time to get to, so it's not a good situation to be in as the Rhydon. Opponent looking for the Air Slash farmed out, but Poliwrath able to make a last-second Dynamic Punch. Dynamic Punch gets no shielded, but the Mandibuzz lives on 1 HP, so not only do I not get Switch, but I don't get a shield advantage either. My opponent sends back in the Alolan Sandslash, and they have too much energy for me to bring in the Rhydon. Rhydon, of course, would take super effective damage from the charge moves from the Alolan Sandslash, so I actually need to stay in here as the Cresselia and tank the moves. They're going to go for double Drill Run, and that's fine. I can absorb that energy, and now I can just undertap the Grass Knot. Grass Knot will not KO, but it should put them into a range where I can hopefully snipe with a Mud Slap from the RHYDON. I go for the Grass Knot, that gets them low. In comes the Rhydon, we get the snipe. In the back, it's Lickitung, and now it's time for RHYDON to spam out Breaking Swipes. Breaking Swipe number 1 into the Lickitung. Lickitung will commit the shield. Lickitung does not have enough energy for a Power Whip. That is only a Body Slam, so I'm gonna no shield here. Due to the Rock subtyping, Body Slam is resisted. My opponent, recognizing that Rhydon isn't the tankiest Pokemon around, they're trying to go straight Body Slam, but by doing so, now I'm in a pretty good situation. Opponent trying to farm down, but the Rhydon says no. Able to make Breaking Swipe number 3. That gets the Lickitung to 1 HP of health, and one more Mud Slap will secure the victory, and the 2 shield flex. Moving into the next match, picking up a positive lead, Cresselia into Shadow Dragonair. Cresselia, of course, does have access to Moonblast, which will absolutely vaporize the Dragonair, but Dragonair, as long as it has shields to hide behind, can do surprisingly okay at this matchup. I build up to the Moonblast, I'm baiting with the Grass Knot, opponent is going to commit the shield, and now I'm going to save switch into Poliwrath. Poliwrath farming up energy here, opponent sends in Lantern, and a Spark Lantern is not what I'm hoping to bait out here. Dynamic Punch will connect, that does quite a lot of damage, as this is a bit unfortunate, as Rhydon can honestly do okay into Spark Lantern as long as shields are up. I decide to let it go, opponent goes for the Surf, that does not do enough damage, and I'm able to make it to a second Dynamic Punch and win the zeros versus the Lantern. The unfortunate thing is this is just going to give more energy to the Dragonair, and Dragonair with energy is an incredibly scary Pokemon. I send in the Cresselia. Cresselia can live a Body Slam here, and then I think I'm going to undertap the Grass Knot. Grass Knot does not KO, but it's going to do a solid amount of damage to the Shadow Dragonair. Grass Knot into the Dragonair will be no-shielded. I get the Snipe with the Shadow RHYDON in the back. It's a Medicham! Oh no, and I think I might lose this. All they have to do is just no-shield, and they win this game. And they're in a pretty good spot. But the shield, wait, maybe I have a win con. Can I make it to a Moonblast? Come on, Cresselia. Cresselia dies with the move, and we lose the game. Hopping into the next match, leading Cresselia into Dewgong. This is a positive lead for Cresselia, and the opponent is choosing to stay in this matchup. Being an Icy Wind user, they're almost always going to shield the first move, as this, of course, is the move that's going to do the most damage to them. And now they can begin to spam out Icy Wind after Icy Wind. I don't really want to shield in this matchup. Cresselia is able to win the zeros, but if my opponent shields the first, the opponent can win the 1-0. So I'm honestly okay with that, because even though they win the 1-0, they don't leave with a lot of residual energy, and I can use it as an opportunity to get some farm onto my Poliwrath. I'm going to farm up a bunch of energy with the Cresselia and fire off the Grass Knot. This is now debuffed, so my opponent is going to be able to withstand this energy, and they will fire off the Icy Wind to deny that. This is perfectly fine. I'm going to let this go, and again, go for energy on the Poliwrath. Opponent going to pivot into Medicham, and I'm staying in with the Poliwrath, because of course, I cannot afford to have this Medicham see the Shadow RHYDON in the back. Scald, connects, no debuff. They have so much energy here. I'm going to commit the shield. Please be the Psychic, and it is. That's a big shield. I'm farming up, going for another Scald, and that's going to be a CMP tie from my opponent. Scald into the Medicham will secure the KO. What do they have in the back? We know they have the very low health Dewgong in the back. Opponent, they have a Spark Lantern, and in comes the RHYDON. Look at the Mud Slaps go. Opponent throws their Surf on alignment, and I get an entire Mud Slap for free. I know they're 3 sparks off, so I can throw 2 Mud Slaps, go for the Breaking Swipe on the CMP tie. And this not only prevents them from over-farming, but also forces the final shield. Now the question is, can I get the counter down with Poliwrath? Surf will get the KO. In comes the Dewgong. Opponent resetting the debuff. Back in comes the Lantern. Poliwrath able to make it to the Dynamic Punch. That will be massive overkill onto the Lantern. And we're able to take the win. We see a familiar lead in the next match, Cresselia into A-Slash, and this is just a miserable, miserable lead for this team. I save switch into the Poliwrath, I get a couple counters on the A-Slash, which is very nice, and in comes the ever-present Medicham. At the very least, Poliwrath is doing its job, baiting out these Medichams, so hopefully the Shadow RHYDON can sweep it in the back. I'm just going to let this through. There's not really a point in shielding, as if I shield, my opponent can shield back and just counter all the way down, so I'm just going to let this go, and then attempt to get a big farm onto Cresselia. I can send in Cresselia. Cresselia is a very nice wall to Medicham. Medicham's energy can't really do anything to Cress. Cress is going to be able to absorb multiple Ice Punches. My goal will be to farm to 100 and then go for the Grass Knot. They're firing off another Ice Punch. Again, Cress absolutely unbothered by the energy from the Medicham. And I decide I want even more energy. So I'm going for an undercharge on the Grass Knot into the Medicham. That should allow me the perfect farm down so I can leave with a Moonblast loaded. Moonblast into the Sandslash is resisted, but it will deal some solid chip damage here. Moonblast will connect. In comes the Shadow RHYDON in the back. It's Shadow Gligar, and this game is so over. They have enough for the dig here. I'm forced to respect it with a shield. Opponent baits with the Aerial Ace. I farm up past the Stone Edge, and I'm baiting with the Breaking Swipe. But their pacing is just so much better in this matchup. They are going to be able to easily make it to the dig, and at this point, I just lose. I just have to let this go. My only hope is they bait. They actually do bait, but they make another Aerial Ace before I make the Stone Edge. This Aerial Ace barely does not KO, and now I just have to hope that for some reason they no-shield. Stone Edge gets no-shielded. In comes the Sandslash. They take a Mud Slap. Can I win this? Oh my goodness. They are very low on HP. I'm going to let the Crest go. They go for the Drill Run, and now it's a race. Psycho Cut versus the Shadow Claw, and the Sandslash on 1 HP will get the win. We move into the next match and see a wonderful lead Cresselia into Medicham. And lead luck is kind of what you're going to need if you end up running Shadow RHYDON. Shadow RHYDON has a thoroughly miserable win rate, as I mentioned. I believe it's an 18% meta win rate. So you're going to need not only a bit of lead luck, but a bit of luck in general to get wins with it. As I do get the attack drop from the Moonblast, that's incredibly nice. They're at the back-to-back digs here, but the digs now do absolutely nothing to Cresselia. So I'm in a pretty nice situation. They go for the dig. I can now massively overfarm. I want to confirm that they will get KO'd here, so I will go for the Moonblast. Moonblast gets the KO onto the Gligar in the back. Opponent running some spice as well. They have Shadow Haunter. Respect to the opponent, but these Shadow Mud Slaps are about to add up. In comes the Shadow RHYDON. Look at the Mud Slap damage. This is enough for the Ice Punch. I respect it with a shield. And I'm looking to blind switch as I'm expecting they're going to blind switch into the Medicham, and they do. I'm farming up with the Poliwrath and firing off the Scald. Scald, as we've seen, will not KO, but it does some very valuable chip damage. Opponent commits the shield, and I get the attack drop at long last. I'm committing the shield here. Does my opponent go for the bait? They do not. They full send the Psychic. I'm able to make it to the Scald, and Scald is going to be doing some very valuable damage onto the Medicham. Medicham, since they're debuffed, I believe they're going to have to go for a Psychic here. Ice Punch will not KO. They go for the Psychic. In comes the RHYDON. RHYDON farms down the Haunter and farms down the Medicham, and we take the win. We see a thoroughly miserable lead in the next match, Cresselia into Shadow Steelix. My plan is to stay in this matchup until they go for the Breaking Swipe, and then save switch into the Poliwrath so I can reset the debuff and store some energy for later. They're going to go for the Breaking Swipe right away. I send in the Poliwrath. Opponent now going to send in the Medicham. So far, we've lost lead and switch, but we did have to bait out this Medicham, and we have a bunch of energy saved on the Cresselia. Scald will connect. I get the attack debuff. That's kind of nice. I'm going to be committed to shield here. Opponent is going to fire off Dynamic Punch, so my opponent is not running Psychic. I'm farming up with the Poliwrath and playing to the CMP tie here. Scald is going to hurt. Opponent commits the shield. I get another debuff. Some RNG going my way in this game. They go for the Ice Punch bait. I'm looking for the farm down, but the Medicham on 1 HP, able to hang on and make it to one final Ice Punch. That will not KO. And now in the back, there's a Carbink. All they have left is a Rock Fairy type and a Steel type. So this is honestly looking okay. I send in Cresselia, they bring in the Shadow Steelix, and now we have the battle of the Breaking Swipe users. And unfortunately, Steelix has a massive edge in terms of bulk. Look at the Breaking Swipe damage. I'm farming up with the RHYDON, going for the last second Breaking Swipe, hoping for the CMP tie, but my opponent is just going to go for the farm down. Breaking Swipe is shielded. In comes Cresselia, and unfortunately, I lose CMP. I wasn't sure who won CMP there, to be honest. Both are very bulk-oriented Pokemon, but it turns out Steelix is the winner of the CMP tie. Grass Knot gets the KO. I'm at -1, but I think double Grass Knot should still do it. My opponent is farming up energy. I'm going to live a Moonblast here if they go for it, and they do, but they get the attack drop, and that's going to seal the game. I get 2 attack drops early on, and it's the attack drop from my opponent that will actually seal the victory for them, as the double Grass Knots will not be enough to KO. Hopping into the final match, and I see a familiar lead, Cresselia into Dewgong. My opponent, like last time, is staying in this lead. Last time, they had a Medicham and a Lantern in the back, so they were triple weak to the Cresselia. My opponent is going to shield the first, but like last time, I do not plan on shielding my Cresselia. If it's the same team as last time, then hopefully I can get my opponent to put their Medicham onto my Poliwrath, and then for the Spark Lantern in the back, I have the Mud Slap RHYDON, which as long as I have a shield, should do pretty well. My opponent is going to be firing off another Icy Wind. Now that I'm very heavily debuffed, this Grass Knot is not going to be enough to KO. They're going to be able to withstand this damage, and as long as they throw their energy before I make it to my next Grass Knot, which they just barely will, I am going to get KO'd here. But this gives me an opportunity where I can get energy onto the Poliwrath. In comes the Poliwrath. Poliwrath gets the counter down. In comes Medicham. And this is perfect. I need the Medicham line onto the Poliwrath. I try and go for the CMP tie with the Scald, but my opponent is going to go for the extra. Scald will connect. I continue to farm up with the Poliwrath. Opponent is going to be firing off their energy. I commit the shield. It's the Psychic. That's a massive call. I'm going to wait a turn to make sure that they don't catch the Scald onto a potential Lantern. and I will go for it. Opponent commits the shield. They're farming up a ton of energy, and if it's a lantern in the back, I need to save the shield for the surf. Even debuffed, it's going to one-shot. I send in the RHYDON. Opponent makes it to a move. Ice Punch is super effective, but it's going to do less than a surf. I let it go. In the back, that's not a lantern. That's a strange-looking fish. That's a tin can Registeel. And I'm going to be firing off the Stone Edge here. Stone Edge does quite a lot of damage. My opponent probably going to go for the Zap Cannon here, but I have to shield no matter what. It is the Zap Cannon. They get the debuff, but Shadow RHYDON will not be denied. Farming down the Registeel, and that's a good game. All in all, I found Shadow RHYDON to be a very effective tool when it comes to reducing queue times. When I started these sets, I was in the low 3200s, and when I ended the sets, I was at 3124, so lost about 90 elo, so hopefully my queue times for the next stream will be somewhat improved. All jokes aside, Shadow RHYDON, it's a Pokemon that it's definitely fun when you get it into the perfect alignment, but any kind of neutral matchup or disadvantageous alignment, it just gets absolutely destroyed. Unfortunately, the typing isn't the greatest for the open Great League meta. It's very hostile to it as a whole. So Shadow RHYDON, while I did have some fun getting to absolutely shred some steel types with it, not a Pokemon that I would recommend using if you're looking to climb elo. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.